Okay, everybody. I'm doing it. Hey, everybody. So, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the Rambo film series. So, the first one is like serious, like it's amongst Stallone's kind of his best work, like because it's serious. It's still got a lot of action movie in there, but it tells like a story, like that's actually meaningful, like disenfranchisement and like a lot of Vietnam soldiers coming home like felt that kind of like no place to go, like if you went into service like when you were an unruly teen and now you come out like a man shaped by war, like you have that disenfranchisement with America. So like he's that, and then he's trying to hang out after he's trying to see a buddy, but the buddy went from cancer from Agent Orange or some horrible shit, so now he's in this town, and like the police chief's like, oh, I'll take you somewhere to get something to eat, and instead, no, to the edge of the town, keep walking, we don't want you. Like, imagine that today to a veteran. Yeah, imagine that today to a veteran. That kind of treatment, disenfranchisement. So that's what Rambo's about, disenfranchisement. That he's, his country gives up on him and society gives up. He can't even get a meal in this town. The sheriff wants him out, and like it's the cops. They trigger him when they arrest him for being a vagrant, for not leaving. And they set off his POW instinct. So then he goes all buck wild. And then this is the first, once it's dead serious until it goes to the point where he throws a rock at a helicopter and it crashes. So that just sets a tone for the whole series. Throw a rock at a helicopter, do something to a helicopter, and it's going to crash. So, that warps into this whole thing where now there's a manhunt. Now more people have to die until his commander comes and says, like, okay. And then he starts to cry. And then he goes to jail. And then we start the second one. It's kind of like a big cash in, and it actually caused a lot of problems because it made people believe that there were still POWs in Vietnam, even into the 1980s from the war. So that was bad because people started, that was like an early fake news thing. People started to believe, like tabloids and Inquirers. Like you can't even sell the Inquirer now because you could just look at the regular headline and it's pretty ridiculous. So we don't really need the Inquirer anymore. Although I still like to know what they're doing with Princess Di. But anyway. So in the second Rambo, it kind of starts to get more ridiculous. It's silly. They lie to him about the POWs, and there are POWs. Then he tells the guy, like, you gotta go rescue the rest of the POWs. And he's like, I'll let you. And then he goes to Thailand. Now, apparently his crime is forgiven for this another task from his country. He's forgiven the crime of killing all those police officers in wherever that was, Colorado, Tennessee. I don't remember. So now he's, I guess, forgiven, and he's living in Thailand. And this time, the same general who's been involved with the whole shit says, we're going up to Afghanistan. There's this bad Soviet general. Like the whole second and third movie is this whole arc about how, the Cold, like the end of the Cold War. Like people are starting to not care about Russia by 1980. Like, they don't seem to be doing well, so we don't have to worry too much. And then obviously what happened, but like there was still some kind of things like trying to prop it up. So Rambo 3 is definitely keying on the war in Afghanistan at that time between the Soviets and Afghanistan, not the United States. And he's siding with the Taliban in their pursuit to get the Soviet general who's got his old general captured. So that's what that movie's about. It's ridiculous. Has one of my favorite scenes where he puts the gunpowder in his wound and blows it up to heal it. Like, that couldn't possibly do anything good if you did it. No way that could work. I think there was Mythbusters. Even if there wasn't, there definitely was. And so that's the third. And then the third one, and then we got a long break. And then Rambo resurfaces again. He had gone back to live in Thailand. And this time, he's back involved with a group of missionaries, like going into Burma, which is Myanmar, which is a bad place. I could tell from the time I've been in Thailand that Myanmar, Burma, like conflicted areas, like Rohingya Muslim. It's like you don't want to go there. And these people are like, yo, take us. And Rambo's like, I'll just take you to this town. It's like, you shouldn't have taken them anywhere. And so guess what happens the minute they get there? Rambo, he says he's not going to take them. So, but they go. And then they get there. Guess what? The first thing that happens is that the town gets ransacked by a warlord. And they get captured. And now there's an all-star group of assassins sent in to get the missionaries. And you know who might want to help them? Oh yeah, they don't want his help, but he's there anyway. And this is when the series, like at this point, it started to go off the rails. Like there's a murder scene earlier in that movie with some guards where you can tell like it's a little hint like, you know, Rambo movies are violent, but they're suddenly going to get so violent that it's like overwhelming. Like the fight scene at the end of Rambo 4 starts to be overwhelming. I remember the first time I saw that, like, wow, this has like extreme violence. Like just the way that they show people like as the victims of gun violence and that is just absolutely ridiculous. Oh man, but so that I felt like that once they started that movie and it was popular because of that, they're like, okay, we got to do, if we're going to do another one, let's do it totally with that in mind. So then we get to the last Rambo. So at the end of this one, after he saves the missionaries, apparently it's been so long he can return back to his original home, which is in Arizona. So he goes back there at the end of Rambo 4, and Rambo 5 is now... I love that the best thing about the Rambo series is that it happens in real time. Is that it really goes from the late... The first one is in... I'm not sure. It's in the 80s. The early 80s. So it goes from the early 80s, where he's wandering around years after the Vietnam War, to all the way to 2019. But just 40 years of this guy's post-Vietnam life, and it doesn't go well for him at any point. His whole life. So that's where this movie starts. So he gets 10 good years once he goes back home. He marries a woman, and well, I don't know that he marries her. They're living together like husband and wife. They don't imply that they're married, other than that her niece calls him Uncle John. So they have like a very caring relationship she got when she was a kid. So this is his daughter, kind of. Like as close as Rambo would get. So anyway, she wants to know about her real father. And she goes with one of her friends who Rambo knew is bad. Because this movie is very shallow. Like the characters aren't well developed at all. So it's just... Now this whole thing is about Rambo, but most of this is going to be about Rambo 5 because I just saw that recently and it was I had so much to talk about. Okay, so anyway, get back to it. And no one has seen it, so it'll be a surprise to everyone. So his daughter character, she wants to go find out about her real father, and she finds out about him through a friend that she had that Rambo knew was no good. So okay, we're there. We'll call it back up. So she goes down to Mexico. She just drives there flat out, meets the girl. She seems like she's no good. They write her in that superficial way where like she's drinking and like blasé about what's happening, and like, oh, you want to go see your father? Like, oh, thanks very much. So then she goes to see him, and the guy's just mega rude to her. He's like, oh, I am your father, but like I never wanted you. So like she was real upset, and like it makes you think like the thing was a put on because the girl's like, let's go to the club. Let's go to the club and drink away those sorrows. And she's like, oh, yeah. She's real upset because her birth father just said I didn't want anything to do with you or your mother. Like, that sucks. Sucks to hear. And her mother died, too. That was part of it. But it was all, like, just to make it extra sad. So then she goes to the club and gets kidnapped. And then the girl's, like, calls up John Rambo. It's like, oh, she never came back from seeing her father. And he's like, okay. So he's down there. He sees the girl. Does some Rambo stuff. She takes him to the club. He sees the dude. He's starting to put two and two together. Meanwhile, we find out that she's mad kidnapped and becoming a white slave. So it's bad news for her. And there's lots of drugs and violence involved in it. And it's not looking good. And then Rambo finds out. But then the guys beat the shit out of him. Bad. Like in a grotesque, like new wave French... saw torture porn kind of way, beat the shit out of him. So and they're like, and then like see his license, know where he lives, and be like, we're gonna let you live just so you can know what kind of violence we're gonna do to the girl. And it's like, oh my god, that's terrible. Even if he wasn't Rambo, and then terrible things happen. Everyone gets a scar. Rambo gets a scar on his face. The daughter gets a scar on her face. Spoilers now at this point, if you didn't realize. Don't bother seeing the movie though. So now he's fucked up. She's fucked up in the horrible, like in a white slave kind of sex for money, and they're loading her up with heroin needles, like terribly murdered, terribly like conditions, and then they send Rambo back, and he's like, he won't stand for that. So he starts setting up his trap and sets up his shit, and then he comes back again and tries to rescue her, and then she dies on the way out because she's so messed up from the situation. So now it's you can just know this, like, this isn't a Rambo story because he's usually trying to do something good, trying to help people that are in trouble. This is just a revenge story now. So it has nothing to do with the other four movies. It's just the character. You're in this ridiculous revenge story like John Wick. That's basically what the model for this movie was, to make another John Wick movie. But instead of John Wick, let's have not a character that's developed that way to go on ridiculous revenge streaks and call him Rambo. Okay, that's good. So now, back to the story. His daughter is dead. He tells his wife that, just leave. Like, there's going to be violence. Like, tons of violence is coming. Like, I'm setting traps like it's fucking Home Alone here. So then we get long montages, like Rocky IV length, of him setting traps like it's Home Alone. Like, he's setting the traps, he's put the gun there, hide this knife here, and you just know the whole time it's just like whetting your appetite for this like extreme orgy of violence that you know is coming. And so he's like, okay, he's setting up, and that's long, and then it breaks. He's back in Mexico now. He finds one of the guys, like, and he just Rambos his way in, and just like with brutal murders of all the guards, comes in, goes up to like one of the partners of the main guy and just cuts his head off and leaves his body there on the bed, like bleeding out, like with the picture of his daughter so they know it was him, of the girl that died, like with the knife in the guy's chest. And then it shows him driving back to USA with the guy's head out the window, and he just drops it. Like, that's so macabre. Like, nothing in Rambo is that macabre. And then from there it becomes Home Alone mixed with French New Wave extreme violence and torture porn. Like, they come to get him, obviously. Like, he sent that message. They came to get him, and he's dug in like a fucking tick. They come in, and they get... And he's got, like, an underground tunnel system. Like, if you're a bad guy and you're going into, like, some psycho's underground tunnel system, like... I don't feel bad about your brutal death. And my God, there's deaths that even turn my stomach in this. And I'm used to this sort of thing in movies. And there was just ones that were so grisly you had to look away. Like, and it's all overkill deaths. Like, clearly captured people. Like, guys that wouldn't pose a threat anymore. He, like, is making sure that they're down for the count. Like, with extreme violence. Like, it's definitely stomach churning. And then in the end, he just rides off into the mountains. He's been shot in every movie, so I assume he was shot in that, and then it's like, they left it open for maybe a sixth movie, where it's back to the original plot, and he's being abused by the police. So, I don't know, that's my interpretation of all the Rambo movies, specifically Rambo 5, which is, I want to say it's my favorite because I'm a fan of bizarre genre mashup movies like that, where it's an action horror movie with like a revenge gore plot subline, like subtlety. Like the plot is this revenge story, but it's told through like a torturous revenge. So that's what I like, and none of the other movies are that. Even when he's rescuing people in Rambo 4 and there's all that violence, it's, he's trying to save lives. Like, at this point, it's just, he could have given up, but he enacts this revenge story. Like, and there's even people that talk to him, like, other people have been kidnapped by these people that are like, just let it go. And he's like, I want to make them all feel like we do every day. And it's just like, the whole character was just wasted, all the years of development, that he's this good guy that like would still help his country out, would still go back to Vietnam and get the POWs, that would still try to save his general in Afghanistan, that would still try to help this missionary. So it would still try to help people. Now it's just pure revenge, like pure murder for the sake of it, just to torture people. Like it's so funny, but that's why it's my favorite now. So thanks everyone for listening.